Hey there guys, I'm back to another game review. Today we'll be taking a look at Mr. Shifty, an indie game that has recently made its way onto the Nintendo Switch. The first time I saw Mr. Shifty was at the Nintendo Switch Indie Showcase. The game looked pretty fun with a concept that I've never seen before. When the game released, I picked it up a couple days later with excitement. So how is the game? Well, let's just get into the story first. The story for Mr. Shifty is that Mr. Shifty, he is a thief, and he has been tasked to break into the Olympus Tower, the most secure building in the world, and retrieve the Mega Plutonium from Chairman Stone. The reason we're getting this Mega Plutonium from him is because he actually stole it and plans on weaponizing it. So pretty much we're Sly Cooper here. We are trying to steal from other thieves in order to save the rest of the world. So the plot is passable, you know, it's pretty much good guy versus bad guy. None of the characters are really all that interesting. Mr. Shifty doesn't talk. Chairman Stone I find as like another generic villain. And the character that talks to you, Nyx, she is very witty, very sarcastic at times, but hey, you know, like it's not exactly to the level of, like, you know, other characters that are also like that, because, you know, it's literally just all text that you're reading. I don't think that there's voice acting within this game at all, so I feel like that, you know, if there was voice acting, maybe I could, you know, appreciate the characters a little bit more, but, you know, just reading blocks of text is, like, not exactly all that interesting. But the story in and of itself just gets the job done and gives us a reason on why Mr. Shifty is in Olympus Tower trying to steal this Mega Plutonium back. Now, the gameplay for Mr. Shifty is probably what attracted most people to this game, including myself. And like I said, Mr. Shifty is a top-down beat-em-up with a teleporting feature. It's as fun as it looks, I promise you. And the teleporting feature, speaking of it, you get 5 charges of it. And once you use all 5, you have to wait for it to fully recharge. But if you use like a couple of them, not all 5, you know, like 4 at most, it will recharge faster than it would if you were to use all 5 of them at once, so keep that in mind. And there's also a bar above the teleporting bar that pretty much fills up when you beat up enemies, and once it's full, it'll activate a slow motion section only when you are being shot at. So this bar can only be used situationally. That's stupid. If you're gonna have me fill up this bar by beating up enemies, that's fine, but if you're gonna have me activate it situationally, I find that to just be dumb. There are so many instances where I could have used this bar, but I couldn't because I was surrounded by melee enemies. You know, if it worked the same way, you know, like if it worked like it does now, but also allow me to use it at my own free will, that would have been fine, you know, like, because this ability has actually saved me so many times within the game, but at the same time, I want to use it at my own free will to, you know, like, beat up these melee guys real quick and not have to worry about them, you know. So I feel like that could have been done, you know, just like give me the freedom to use this ability when I want, because there are only like 2 buttons used on the entire controller, really. So Mr. Shifty can only take 1 shot/hit before he dies, so it's pretty much like a trial and error based game, I would say, because you are learning a lot from when you are dying. Like, oh my god, I should not be doing that, you know, I shouldn't be running into that laser like that. So depending on how good you get at this game, your deaths could be very low or very high, and it doesn't affect your overall ending of the level. Like, the end screen will show you your deaths and the amount of time you took for the level. There's no penalty for you doing it longer or you doing it with less deaths. It's just, you know, bragging rights for your own self, like, hey, I could be my own personal scorer. So I felt like that there should have been a leaderboard system or like a ranking system at the end of each level, so like, you know, give me like a rank when I finish this level under this certain amount of time. So that was just another missed opportunity I found. And the game does get harder, you know, obviously, as you keep playing. And the only time I felt frustrated within this game was at the last level. Now, obviously, you know, this is the last level, so it's supposed to be difficult. But it was difficult for the wrong reasons, I found. When you enter a room within any level, it'll give you a checkpoint. And the rooms are not that big, you know, they are reasonable within size. All you gotta do is defeat all of the enemies and then go through the door into the next room. And then that'll spawn a new checkpoint. Now, for the last level, there's this room that is as big as 2 rooms, and there are no checkpoints in between. So if you like mess up halfway through this section that is as big as 2 rooms, you're going to be going back to the beginning. And bad checkpoints have always been the most frustrating thing within games, no matter what, you know, like just like having to redo a whole section over again that you've already mastered, but because you messed up on a new section and then just having to go all the way back, it just seems very frustrating and very time consuming for no reason at all, other than the fact that the game developers forgot that this room was too big for, you know, this section to be done within one try, I would say. So that's like the only time I felt frustrated. But now let's move on to, you know, some more positive points about this game. The enemies within this game, the guards, they are pretty good. There's a nice variety here. You got guys with guns, you got guys with flamethrowers, you got guys that are just, you know, nice and big and just like beat you up, you know, like there's a nice variety here. And it works, honestly, you know, like I never felt like I was being cheated when I had to go and face a certain enemy type. You know, there was always a way to go and defeat them in some way, shape, or form. Now, my only problem with these enemies is their AI. And their AI is not that great. And what do I mean by that? Now, when you hear gunshots being fired, all of the other guards would come to the guard's aid, right? You know, since, you know, he is shooting at something. But in this game, they actually just don't move. Like, sometimes they just don't move, they just don't care. And I find that to be very weird, because in a lot of other games, you know, mainstream games, you know, if there's gunshots being fired, that'll cause attention, and, you know, more people will come, you know, like the other bad guys and stuff like that. So I felt like that this game's AI was not exactly up to snuff to what I had expected for it, because, you know, like, obviously that would make the game more difficult, but at the same time, the game never really had challenged me at all. You know, like I was doing well, you know, obviously I would die a lot and learn from it, because, you know, trial and error, but, you know, I never felt frustrated or felt like, you know, it was very, very difficult, because, you know, like, the enemies were not as smart as they probably should be, because they could also shoot each other, by the way. Like, they could also just like happen to misfire and, you know, shoot each other, which is a good thing, obviously. You know, that'll implement into your strategy when you are playing this game. So I guess that is sort of like a good and bad thing. So yeah, but there are also objects within every single level that you can pick up and throw at the enemies. So they could be like cups, or like a keyboard, or like sticks, or like melee weapons of any type, like a broom. So they work all as like one hit to the enemies, so that's pretty good. And one thing that I found strange within the gameplay is that there were no boss fights. No boss fights at all, like 0 boss fights. And even when you meet Chairman Stone, it's not a final boss fight at all. Like, it's fairly disappointing once you finally get to, you know, kick his ass, I guess. So despite me mentioning all of these complaints, I still had a lot of fun with this game. You know, with what the game presented me, with what I had within the gameplay, I still had a lot of fun. There was a lot of strategy within maneuvering every single level, trying to use your teleporting ability differently in every single level. And yeah, it's a fast-paced beat 'em up thanks to that teleport ability. So obviously, you know, the complaints that I mentioned, not being able to slow down time at will, and, you know, the AI not being as strong as I, you know, want it to be, I still thought that this was a great game. And hopefully, if they make a sequel, it'll end up being better, because this is actually Team Shifty's like first game ever. So, like, you know, I could cut them some slack, but, you know, not too much. So hopefully when they make a sequel, it's a lot better. They fix up these problems that I mentioned. And yeah, so now let's move on to presentation, because presentation for this game is actually pretty good in some aspects. So the graphics for this game look pretty good. They look like a comic book, you know, like with the cel shaded look and everything. So that's pretty good in terms of graphics. Music wise, it gets the job done. You know, it fits the Mr. Shifty tone that they're going for. So I really did like that. Now, the major complaint that I have in terms of the presentation is the performance for this game on the Nintendo Switch. And the Switch version could have been polished up so much, because when you start the game off, it looks pretty good, you know, like the frames aren't dropping or anything like that. But once you get into the later half of the game, you'll see frames start dropping, and the game will just look very sluggish. And heck, even times the game will like freeze on me for like half a second and then, you know, continue, because there was so much going on the screen. When you punch someone, you know, the game has to register it and stuff like that. So the game does look extremely sluggish, especially towards the later half. And honestly, I couldn't record the full game. I could not record this entire game when I was playing it, because it would freeze up my Elgato program so much because of how laggy it was. And I thought that it was my Elgato, but no, here's some footage of Zelda Breath of the Wild that I took after doing Mr. Shifty. This game is a lot more intensive than Mr. Shifty, and yet it's not dropping frames, it's not stopping by recording. So why does an indie game like Mr. Shifty have frame rate problems? Were they rushed to go and get this onto the eShop market in time? Who knows? Like, even when I played this game not docked, there were still frame rate issues. The game would still freeze up here and there, and heck, the game even crashed on me one time. Like, that was pretty weird, you know, that was pretty funny too. But one time occurrence, it didn't happen ever again. So if I were you, just look into the Steam version. I would imagine that that game would run a lot better on Steam because the game was built for the PC and then just ported over to the Switch. So just take that into consideration. So after all this, would I still recommend Mr. Shifty on the Nintendo Switch? Well, let me put it like this. If you watched the trailer and you liked what you saw, check this game out, especially if you're into beat-em-ups. I still had a lot of fun playing this game despite my complaints with the performance issues and gameplay aspects. If they do decide to make a sequel, you know, like a Mr. Shifty 2 or something like that, I hope that they address these issues. Now, I would recommend you check out the Steam version first, despite me not having any experience with it. I have watched some YouTubers play it, and it seems to be running a lot better than the Switch version. No lag whatsoever, so check that version out first. But if you still want to pick it up on the Switch because of the portability that it has, just be aware that there are lag issues and frame rate drops later within the game. So yeah, that is my review of Mr. Shifty. Thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to check out my twitch.tv live stream at twitch.tv/tvsonicgaming. Today at 6 p.m. EST, I will be live streaming The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. Be sure to come by, hang out, say hi, and I will be answering your questions in chat. You know, whatever questions you got for me, it pretty much a Q&A in chat anytime I get a chance to look at it. So yeah, be sure to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And I think that's about it. There's some videos on your screen right now. Be sure to check those out as well. And I'll see you guys next time with more videos. Game on, gamers.